How's it going? It's been a while. A lot has happened in the past. What's been probably, um, it's probably been almost a year now, probably not quite, since I've done one of these. But I'm doing another book review. This one is a little bit of a unique one, not like the other things I've reviewed so far, but also not completely out of touch with some of the things I've reviewed. This one is Francis of the Filth by George Miller. For those who may not know, George Miller is Filthy Frank, who is also Joji, the hip hop artist. I'm not going to bother going through Joji's history, but basically, he was a YouTuber before he made music, and he had some lore in his YouTube videos, and he had to quit for one reason or another. I can't remember what it was, but he decided to put the rest of the lore into this book. I got this some years ago. I got it when it first came out, actually. But I never got around to reading it until just late last year. I probably finished it around October or November of last year. And it's an interesting book. It's, George Miller, he's certainly not... he's not an experienced author, and I think it definitely shows in his book. And I don't think he's claiming to be an experienced author. I think this was kind of just something that he just wanted to do, just to give the fans of Filthy Frank some closure, right? And I think it does that really, really well. I think it does what it was intended to do excellently. Again, he's very much an amateur writer, and it shows throughout the book. There's some grammar and some spelling mistakes throughout it. His vocabulary is more expanded than you'd expect at certain points, and at other points, there's points where I'm like, I probably could have written something better than that, right? It overall impressed me, if I'm going to be completely honest. It was better than I thought it would be. It was actually very engaging. It had a very intriguing world. And he actually does a very good job of fleshing this world out and giving it depth. And then, of course, it has all the same characters from the YouTube videos that everyone knows and loves. And then he has some additional ones that he never showed in the YouTube videos. He does really good with describing the settings that he puts his characters in. And there's a lot of really expansive, unique, and how do you put it? You have settings of all different kinds. There's a point where he's in the rice fields. There's a point where they're like climbing mountains. There's a point where he's in like a liquid world or something like that. It's really, really interesting, if I'm going to be honest. And it actually didn't leave me just dragging through the book and waiting for it to be over. It was actually pretty engaging from beginning until end. And of course, it was hilarious as well. And it just really, it brings some really nice closure to those who wanted more from Filthy Frank before he switched to full-time music. I think my biggest complaint about the book, setting his amateur writing skills to the side, is probably the ending. I thought the ending was a little bit cringe. Spoiler alert for anyone who wants to read the book without getting spoilers at the end of the book. And I guess this is kind of another flaw in and of itself, is the book ends with a Deus Ex Machina, where, like, quite literally a Deus Ex Machina. Frank is about to be killed by like 3 different Peace Lords. One of them is Chin Chin, and they all just randomly freeze, and they, stop hurting him, and then God appears to Filthy Frank, right? And then God basically tells Filthy Frank that he needs to go and like minister to the outcasts of the world and things like that. So the Deus Ex Machina, for starters, was a little bit of a disappointment, but it also foreshadows throughout the book that Frank was going to speak with God. So I can forgive it overall, but the real disappointment came at the very end, when Frank realizes that he himself was actually God. So he actually spoke to, I guess, the ultimate form of himself. And it kind of just gives off, like, it basically is trying to tell you that, like, at least the vibe that I got from it was everybody is a god in their own right. You know, like everybody's a god of like their own internal universe or whatever, something like that. And I just thought it was it was very postmodern. It was very unoriginal. And I just wasn't a fan of it personally overall. Um, but that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the book. It was definitely worth a read. It was really interesting. I don't know if I would say that it's a must read by any means. You could probably go your whole life without reading this book and be perfectly fine. But if you're a Filthy Frank fan, you want more content, go for it, I say. Overall, as for rating, I'd probably give it, it's like a solid 7.8 out of 10. If we were to hold it up to the standard of more experienced writers, then it would probably be somewhere more along the lines of like a 4, just because there are a lot of amateur writing techniques that he uses. But I don't think it's really fair to hold it up to the standard of more experienced writers. So for what it is, it's probably 7.8 to 8 out of 10. It's not too bad. But yeah, that has been my review of Francis of the Filth by George Miller.